If you're trying to conceive and feeling overwhelmed with fertility advice, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to Don't Tell Me to Relax, your fertility podcast and antidote to unhelpful fertility information. I'm Hannah, a fertility acupuncturist, teacher and campaigner for better fertility education. This podcast aims to empower and inform you about your menstrual cycle and fertility. It's basically all that information you didn't get in sex ed at school, with the aim of improving your understanding of your reproductive health and optimizing your fertility. Good morning, you lovely people. I am here today with the lovely Alex, who many of you will know from our previous episode that we did all about AMH, which has actually been a super popular episode in that I think we were had over 1,500 downloads for it, Alex. So
I love that.
Yeah, clearly a topic close to people's hearts and interests. So today we're not talking AMH, but we are talking about fertility MOTs, which is something that is a hugely growing industry and becoming a lot more popular, I think, since lockdown, since people have started to struggle getting access to GPs and testing through their GPs. I think there's a lot of companies and clinics out there that are offering these fertility MOTs. So Alex talks about it quite a lot on her Instagram page. So I thought I'll get her in to talk about it. And before we go into all of that, Alex, do you want to introduce yourself in case anybody doesn't know who you are?
Hello everybody. I'm an acupuncturist. I'm a sort of fertility kind of supporty, mentory, coachy kind of person. I bang on a lot on Instagram about things that make me cross about the fertility industry, about the misunderstandings about fertility, about the fear mongering that goes in and around kind of overselling of IVF. That's me.
Okay. And so let's start right at the beginning and talk about a fertility MOT. So tell us, what is a fertility MOT?
Fertility MOT or fertility assessment is I find people go for these. There's different reasons for people go for these. Sometimes people go for them because they've been trying to get pregnant for a while and nothing is happening, and they kind of think, I'm going to go for a fertility assessment. It's going to tell me, it's going to assess my fertility. It's going to explain to me why I'm not getting pregnant. It's going to tell me if I have any hope of getting pregnant naturally and if I need IVF. That's kind of what people think it's going to do. You get other people who maybe are those super organized. You must have clients like that, Hannah, who they're not even trying yet. They're thinking of trying soon. They're, either they've got a wedding coming up and they want to start trying the moment they're married, or they've got some date coming up and we're going to start trying in January, but we'd like to kind of pre-check everything. And so sometimes they go for a preemptive fertility assessment. And again, with the idea of, they think that the very term fertility assessment or fertility MOT is going to give them some idea of their potential to conceive naturally. And the idea, I think people think, is it's going to show them why things maybe won't work or why they can't work or what they need to work on. And in reality, in my opinion, most fertility assessments / fertility MOTs are little more than an IVF pre-sales tool.
Okay, so if somebody goes for a fertility MOT, let's say they go to a fertility clinic. So let's start, because I know there are online options, but let's talk about the ones that are offered through clinics. What actually is usually tested at a fertility MOT?
Well, surprisingly, AMH is usually tested in a fertility assessment. In fact, in most kind of regional clinics and even in the London clinics, mostly AMH can sometimes be almost the only thing that is tested in terms of blood tests. You'll often find a fertility assessment or fertility MOT which is based on an AMH blood test, a natural follicle count scan, or a basic pelvic scan, like a 2D scan, often not even including a semen analysis. And on the basis of that, they give you some kind of feedback about your fertility. And it's disingenuous. It's not a fertility assessment. I mean, if someone came to you and they said, this is my AMH blood test level, and this is the report from my pelvic scan, am I fertile? You and I would know that we wouldn't have a hope in hell of working out whether they were fertile or not. We wouldn't have a hope in hell of working out what they need to work on, what needs to be polished, what needs to be tested, what needs to be investigated, what the signs and symptoms are of where the problems might lie. It's not enough information. The worry is, particularly with me, is if someone is currently on the pill, planning to be pregnant at some point in the future and thinking about doing a fertility assessment before they come off the pill, they will often find AMH is really low. AMH can be really low when you're on the pill, particularly if you've been on the pill for a very long time. So you go for your fertility assessment, and the headline that comes out of that is, your AMH is really low, you need IVF now. You're just like, excuse me, no, you need to come off the pill. You need to get your cycle rolling. And then when your cycle is rolling really well, low pain, 28 to 32 days, nice fresh flow, no clots, looking really lovely. At that point, you measure AMH. Once your cycle has got to that point, and 3 months further on, when you know that your ovaries are kind of basically, for you, fully functioning, that's the point you measure AMH.
Yes, I had somebody in clinic actually recently who was doing egg freezing, and she had gone for an assessment the month she came off the pill and was told that her AMH was low, and that her androcorp follicular count wasn't great, and that she needed to go as quickly as possible. She went off and did some research and discovered that, well, she'd just come off the pill, so that was incorrect information, and went back to the clinic, and they did say, after she kind of suggested it, oh, okay, yes, yeah, come back and we'll do it again in 3 months' time. So it was only when it was challenged did they say, oh yeah, actually, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Which I found astonishing.
Yeah. And actually, the impact of the pill on AMH was one of my kind of baptism of fire kind of moments, I think, with AMH. It was years ago where someone had come in with, like, she was in her late 20s and she had an AMH of about 6. And she was in a flat out panic. She was on the pill. She'd been on the pill for 10 years or more. She just decided she wasn't even planning on trying to get pregnant. There'd been like a family kind of fertility story going on, and so she just thought, oh well, I'm going to be 30 soon. I'll do a fertility assessment now just to make sure that my fertility is all okay for the future. And they picked up this low AMH and sent her off into a tailspin of, I need to do egg freezing now. I need to do it now and now. And I managed to persuade her that really properly she ought to come off the pill and spend a few months trying to get her cycle rolling better before she did her egg collection. And by the time she got around to her egg collection, her AMH was in like the high 20s, early 30s. She got so many eggs collected from a single cycle, whereas had she gone when the AMH was 6, she'd have ended up doing multiple cycles to collect eggs from ovaries that were half asleep. And I think they do know this, and they're not necessarily telling people, which is difficult.
Yeah. And why do you think this is the way that it is? Why are we at this situation where that's all that's offered?
Oh, you're asking me the tricky questions.
I know. If I can ask anyone, Alex, I know I can ask you.
Yeah. Why would the place that solves fertility with IVF be the best place to go to find out how your fertility looks and what you can and can't do about your fertility? Because the answer, most likely, to the obvious answer from that clinic's perspective, is going to be IVF. It's a rare IVF clinic that will tell someone, ooh, your cycle's a bit of a mess. I'd go off and do a few months of holistic fertility support to get your cycle lined up and make it look more like a healthy cycle before you even considered assessing your fertility. I mean, I've literally never heard of that. So you're walking into a space where the solution to infertility is IVF. You're walking into a space where it's not possible. I don't even think it's kind of clinically ethical for medics to tell someone to go and do something as weird and wacky as acupuncture or reflexology to improve their menstrual cycle, because it doesn't fit the scientific rigor that they have to work with. So it's not even that they wouldn't kind of in the back of their head sort of think, oh, maybe this person should go and have 3 months of acupuncture before they come back here. I don't know what the restrictions are, but I kind of get the sense that even if they thought it might work, it's very difficult to recommend it because it's not a guideline thing. Most people have no idea of the impact of holistic fertility support on a menstrual cycle. Most people have absolutely no idea of the impact of holistic fertility support on sperm health.
Yes, exactly. And so in from your perspective, what would you do to properly assess? Let's separate men and women. So if you want to do a proper assessment on a female, what would you advise? If somebody wants to understand their fertility, what do you think should be checked? Because there's 1,000,001 tests out there, aren't there? And it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you're. I mean, I know you must do the same. I do like an initial kind of what I call like a 360-degree fertility review. I kind of I take it and I look at it from as many different angles and directions as I possibly can. But from a female fertility perspective, I really strongly focus on the menstrual cycle. What's it look like? What's it feel like? What's the rhythm like? How, what signs and symptoms are there of the hormones being managed really well or the hormones not being managed really well? What's the pain levels like? What's the blood flow like? Is there clots? Is there spotting? You're looking at all of that in fine detail. I think we pay a lot of attention to that because we can fix it. I mean, I've got a new set of clients at the moment. So they've been with me. They've just had her first period since they started. So they're coming as a couple. And at the beginning, I was going, sitting chatting to them both, and her cycle was, 24 days, and I'm something like that, and I'm like going, oh yeah, no, well, I said, well, okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to push this cycle up to kind of 28 days. We're going to get rid of that clotting. We're going to change the way that the cycle works. And he just kind of he almost sniggered, but he didn't quite snigger. But in a good nature way, and he's like, yeah, I kind of believe that when I see it. Well, honestly, really, what you're going to do? And I'm like, watch me. And so I treated her. I think I've just treated her for her third treatment. So we only got 2 in last cycle. So because she started around ovulation, and we've already got to 27 days with no clots.
Amazing.
So and I've said to her this cycle, she's now on. I don't know. She's pre-ovulation still, but she's on day 13. So I'm like, okay, this cycle I would anticipate we're probably heading up for 28 to 29.
Yeah.
So he's slightly chin on the floor and he's like, I think I'd underestimated you. And I'm like, everybody does. Yeah. So I think when I'm looking to assess fertility, I start with that. That is like this massive red flag. If that is not right, there's work to do there. And whatever else is going on, I know that fertility for that person can be improved by improving their menstrual cycle. It's a given. It means you're improving their hormone regulation, their ovaries will be working better, everything will be working better. So that's where I start. And then there are some kind of, again, and it comes through experience of finding the stuff. If I'm working with someone, and it's kind of accumulated over the years where I've been working with someone and then you do a deep dive on their thyroid and you work out they've got Hashimoto's and you get them the support they need for that. You send them to the right endocrinologist, they get that sorted out, pregnant within a month. And then that goes in my little tick box. Don't miss that one. It's simple, it's easy, it's easily missed. So I check stuff like that. I will check like basic blood stuff that I see again repeatedly making a big difference. So low iron and ferritin levels. If someone's got like low iron and ferritin levels, like ferritin levels down in their sort of teens or 20s, I know that impacts egg quality. And I know that if I can get that up, the chances are if that is their catch point, then things will roll. Lots of people have lots of different things, lots of different areas to work on. Almost the more I can find, the happier I am, because
Yeah.
you're chipping away at it. And if you find something, you don't just kind of, or certainly I don't kind of go, oh, it's great, we found an infection in the vaginal microbiome, that's it, let's sit back. It's like, okay, so we found that, but we still haven't checked the iron, the vitamin D, the B12, the folate. We still haven't checked the thyroid properly. We still haven't checked sperm health. So I don't stop looking, because if I stop looking, then I miss something. So I'm constantly, every time I see them, I'm rechecking cycle symptoms. I'm rechecking kind of general health, digestive system, sleep systems, immune systems, mental health. You're just rechecking the whole time. Have I missed something? Is there something else that I can work on that will improve this? So it's a really big thing. And the idea that you can literally do a pelvic scan and a blood test and go, oh, yeah, you need IVF, is ridiculous.
Yeah. It's hard though, isn't it? Because not everybody can work with an acupuncturist or a nutritionist or someone who's going to go into that kind of holistic 360 approach to understanding their health. So if somebody wants to kind of, let's say in a dream world where people can go and get their fertility assessed as much as possible through, let's say, blood work and a scan, what would you be looking at there? Because there are quite a lot of online companies, aren't there now, who do female reproductive health
Yeah,
blood
I mean,
work.
like the Hertility kind of fertility assessment. Sorry, am I allowed to brand name mention? I don't know. But they do a really nice set of blood tests. It's a really nice kind of fertility assessment set of blood tests. It almost covers. It's not quite everything I would look at, but it's pretty good. And it's like 150 quid or something. It's a pretty good price point for a really nice range of blood tests. Something like that is pretty informative. I think I would start with, for most people, and I know, again, you and I work with people with complex long-term infertility where there are distinct things in the way. So there may be infections, there may be proper thyroid problems, but with an awful lot of people, it is just a matter of the cycle just needs a bit of love and support. And for that, you don't need to be working with a holistic health practitioner. You can get some of those amazing books. There are amazing books that will take you through fixing your own menstrual cycle if you're trying to do it on a budget. You have to be a bit more self-guided. You have to do a bit more reading and a bit more research. But find one. Like there's the Lenise Brothers book. There's Maisie Hill's book. There's let's have a sheet somehow attached to this of some of our favourite.
Nicole Jardim, she does a good one.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I want to, if we can sort of, you can just have a sheet of some of our favourite books that we have on our counter that actually, they make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, finding something like that and working through it and looking at the kind of little things that you can do, little things in terms of little dietary changes, sometimes targeted supplements based on symptoms, not a supplement because it helped my friend get pregnant, but a supplement because you've got that symptom and that supplement is known to help with that symptom. My standard tests are the two that I just do all of the time. I do the Medicheck's male hormone panel for the ladies on day 2-3. I prefer that to the female hormone panel. So often Medichecks question the ladies and they go, are you sure you want the male hormone panel? Do you not want the female hormone panel? And I'm like, no, you want the male one, because it looks at DHEA as well, and the female hormone panel doesn't. And I quite like to see that whole kind of hormone pathway from DHEA, testosterone, estrogen. I like to see the balance in that. So I like that one on day 2-3. It tells me a lot. It also does prolactin, it does SHBG, it does the testosterone, it does FSH, LH, estrogen. It's a nice test. The other test that I rate a lot and that I use all the time is, again, it's a Medicheck's test, but it's the advanced thyroid function test. I like it because it does a decent thyroid view. So you've got your TSH, you've got your free T4, free T3, so you've got your thyroid output, you've got your two principal thyroid antibodies. So it does a really nice thyroid check. But it also looks at vitamin D, folate, B12, ferritin. It looks at other things that I also see playing a part, and all things that you can kind of go, oh, that's a problem, let's fix that. It's really difficult to sometimes to read the blood test relative to fertility if you don't know what you're talking about, because sometimes the ranges are not like the ranges that they give for normal. Ferritin I think can go from like something like 20 up to something like 300 or whatever, in terms of its range. But for me, anything under 50 would be like, I'm not sure I'm not sure the iron stores are enough. Vitamin D again goes from really low to really high. But for pregnancy or fertility and pregnancy, you wouldn't really want to see it much under kind of 60, 70 at a minimum. So it's sometimes a bit difficult to get your own blood test if you haven't got the knowledge of how to read them. I mean, even a thyroid test, the normal range is not the same as ideal for fertility. And you and I pick up a lot of that because we work reasonably regularly with the functional nutritionists. So we pick stuff up from them, which helps us to formulate our ideas of ideal ranges. We have our training through the fertility support training thing, which again has given us a really good grounding in kind of ideal levels and targets to aim for. So it is sometimes, I think, a little bit difficult to navigate yourself through some of that sort of self-teaching, because it's stuff that we've specifically learned through either what we're doing or the training that we've had. But they're certainly not a bad set of blood tests to get, and if you can't make sense of them, then take them to someone.
Yeah. And what do you think about this idea of testing? Because the more I think about it, the more I think we should be testing ourselves at various different points in our lives. So, in our teenage years, even in our 20s, in our 30s, I think that having a kind of general blood assessment of your hormones, maybe a transvaginal scan to see where everything is, because everybody I've ever spoken to on this podcast, when I say, what is the one thing you wish people knew more about their fertility? And everybody always says, I wish people had investigated sooner and I wish they understood more, because I think that would really help people not be entering into this world in their 30s or 40s, which is a very different place.
I think that would have to go hand in glove, though, with a better understanding of what some of these blood tests are.
Yeah.
Because I think there are, when you look at the research and then you look at like what goes on around you, most of the women who decide they'd like to get pregnant and get pregnant within the first couple of months, the majority of them have low AMH. If they were testing at some point preemptively in their 20s and they were one of the people that had naturally normal low AMH and was producing great eggs and was super fertile, it would put the fear of God into them, because they had low AMH and AMH is misunderstood. Yes, there would be, within that cohort, there would be a tiny number of women who had a more significant low AMH ovaries really struggling problem, but that's different. Low AMH with raging high FSH is different to low AMH in a perfectly healthy ovary. So yes, I think it would be great if we had a better understanding of our hormones and a better view through life. But I think in terms of fertility testing, because most of the medical testing in terms of fertility assessment is so strongly based on AMH, and AMH is so frighteningly represented and talked about, I think it would cause an awful lot of fear. It's amazing how many people with secondary fertility come in with low AMH and they conceive really easily with their first one, and you're like, do you think your sperm health has declined since then?
Yeah. One thing that's just sprung to my mind, Alex, as well, while we're talking about assessing fertility and whether we should, go in for check-ins, is that there is no test for egg quality. So, you can have all your numbers and you can do all there's so many tests out there these days. But also what I've realized recently from speaking to consultants and embryologists on the podcast is that there is so much people don't understand about fertility. There are tests that are not yet invented that will come in time as the science kind of improves and the research improves. So it's also having an awareness that there is this amazing ability to test things, but that doesn't always give you all the answers.
No, and I can, when you're looking at lots of people who are struggling with infertility are struggling with unexplained infertility. And I'm not alone, and there's an awful lot of us that rail against the idea of unexplained infertility, because the vast majority of unexplained infertility is explainable. In terms of it's explainable in that I can't see how you can have unexplained infertility and have a horrific menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
That's not unexplained. There's something in that menstrual cycle that is demonstrating that there is something that needs support. Often not medical support. Medical support's not always going to answer a wonky menstrual cycle. In fact, medical support does very little for a wonky menstrual cycle in terms of fertility. It's very good at suppressing pain. It's very good at controlling a cycle in terms of putting someone on the pill, controlling a cycle in terms of giving someone a hysterectomy, but it's not going to improve your fertility and cycle. Medical intervention doesn't really do that. So, unexplained infertility with an awful menstrual cycle is not, in my opinion, unexplained. Unexplained infertility with a really difficult digestive system is not, in my opinion, you can't just put that under unexplained infertility. We know the impact of a wonky digestive system on fertility, the inflammation that comes from that, the compromised digestive system, compromised nutrients, the impact that inflammation and a poor digestive system will have on hormone regulation, on blood sugar control, on egg quality, on the whole shebang. But often I'm in that kind of conversation where I'm talking to a new client and they mention that they've had, long-term IBS issues, but they're not interested in working on their digestion. They're just interested in fertility. And you have to have that kind of complicated conversation of, well, health begins in the stomach. We have to involve trying to sort the digestive system out in order to improve the fertility, because the two things are really likely to be linked. So, if you're insomniac, that's not an unexplained infertility. That will have an impact. If you're, there are so many aspects of health that impact fertility. And then beyond that, you've then got the more the things that the NHS don't pick up, but that we do. So the thyroid antibodies, the chronically low vitamin D, the vaginal microbiome infections, the structural issues that we might pick up with some of the more advanced scanning that we send people for. So, and again, I'm still only talking on the female side. You've also got, being able to look at a semen analysis with a slightly more switched on head and kind of go, well, I know they say it's normal, but you've got plus 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 on your debris. So what's going on there? That being able to look more closely at listening for things like, when you ask the questions and, do your balls ache if you've been on your feet all day? Yes. Okay. So maybe there's a blood flow issue. Maybe there's a varicocele. Maybe there's something in that. Are you getting up in the night to go for a pee all the time? Maybe there's a low grade infection going on. So, asking the right questions. And again, with the men, if you've got IBS symptoms or you've got like a difficult digestive system, it's going to be having an impact on your sperm health. It's not an unexplained infertility if you've got this wider picture stuff going on.
And that's really interesting, isn't it? Because that's what I always think, is that we all often see fertility as separate from anything else, whereas fertility is an extension of your health.
Yeah.
It's not like something that sits kind of like just within your reproductive system and it stays there. It is part of your health. So if there is something going on in your health, then that could be having an impact upon your fertility and needs to be investigated, rather than it being seen as completely separate, which is often what can happen.
And not always that it needs investigating, because the other thing, again, that you will do and I do on a regular basis is if someone's got low grade kind of digestive stuff where it's just a bit unsettled or it's a bit IBS-y or they've got, their sleep's a bit broken or this, that and the other, side effects from regular acupuncture: better digestion, better sleep, better immune system regulation, better mental health. So they're all, I can be working on someone's menstrual cycle and trying to improve their fertility. I would expect everything else to be getting better. And at the end of the day, what doesn't, I need to get more kind of hardcore investigative about and make sure we've got the right practitioners working with them or the right doctors working with them, because an awful lot of low grade stuff will just self-resolve with a bit of regular acupuncture.
And what were you going to say about fertility testing? The difference, you were going to say there's something about them not all being equal.
Yeah, there's because occasionally for fun I have a little spreadsheet and I'll kind of mark, which clinics are offering fertility assessments and what they include. And so I'm looking at this sheet in front of me, and I've got some of them it's just AMH and a pelvic scan, or AMH and a natural follicle count scan. Some of them are AMH, thyroid, so TSH, full blood count, rubella, chlamydia, gonorrhea, natural follicle count, 3D saline scan and hycosi, semen analysis, and you're just like, whoa, that's a lot more comprehensive.
Yeah.
It's like, that to me is almost justifies the term fertility assessment.
Yeah.
But most of them aren't that. And so, fertility clinics which offering fertility assessments, find out what that involves.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's worth paying for, because they're expensive. I mean, you're talking £400, £500, £600, £700, £800 for a fertility assessment. That's a lot of intervention that you could have from a holistic space. And at the end of the day, is it going to make your cycle any better? Is it going to make your general underlying health any better? And is it going to give you any answers as to what you can do to get pregnant naturally? I don't think I've come across many people who've come out of an IVF clinic fertility assessment and have not been told that they need IVF. Sometimes they're told to try naturally for the next 2 or 3 months. If it doesn't work, which they don't expect it to, come back for IVF. Sometimes they're told they need IVF right now, no time for delay, no time for prep. But they're not usually told to go away and work on their underlying health.
Yes, that's where we come in.
That's where we come in.
We haven't got time to touch on sperm today, but actually I have just done at the weekend a whole episode on proper sperm testing with Claire Mooney from Fertility Solutions.
Love Claire Mooney.
Yeah, and it's really, really good because she really talks about why a standard sperm test alone, a single standard sperm test, is not a fertility male test really at all. And so she goes into that in great detail about what should be tested. So I will be releasing that at some point. So I definitely say to anyone who wants to know more about male testing, then listen to Claire's episode, because it's got loads of really good stuff and details about how to work with them. Okay, Alex. Well, thank you so much for today. You have been amazing, as always, in sharing loads of really good information. I'm really interested in your fertility clinic spreadsheet.
It's a secret.
Oh, that's got some juicy information on, I'm sure. I will put all your details on the show notes, as always. And I think it's a good idea. I'll list the books about understanding your cycle and understanding hormones, because there is a lot out there that you can do yourself. And I would say that if fertility testing isn't for you, there is a lot you can learn by just understanding your cycle and knowing your signs and symptoms, which obviously is something that we talk about all the time. So there's a lot of great resources out there if you want more information. So that will all be listed. Thank you, Alex. Have a lovely day. And I'm sure you will be back to talk about something very soon.
Anytime. All right, then. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed listening to this and want to find out more, then come and join my free community in Facebook. We have loads of resources. You can catch up on all our previous webinars and be the first to know about forthcoming events. To sign up, just follow the link in the show notes. And if you'd like to work one-to-one with myself or one of the team, then please see our website, hannahpern.com, where you can book in directly or organise a discovery call to find out how we can support your fertility and your reproductive health.